Hello, welcome back to my channel. Hi, if you're new here, I'm a 3L, vibing, trying to have a 3L year, even though school is not letting me have that, but I'm trying. Anyways, this video, I've been trying to do this video since the summer, but I kept not having time to record it or just like not sitting down to do it. But I've wanted to do this for a while because I realized that over my life, I guess, not really these recent years, different firms with different sizes, and some of them were nonprofit, some of them were like private, and all of them always come with different titles. And not, believe me, I don't really know what's going on either, so don't take what I say completely like as is, because I'm just not sure really like if things are different because of the title or because of where I'm at. But I just figured I would sort of talk about the differences are, so in case any of y'all are like first generation going into things like I was when I was going into all these roles, maybe this video will give you an idea of what those differences are and like what to expect. That's what the goal is, just sort of like help y'all have a better understanding of what to expect going into these roles. So when I first started working, I was an intern at a boutique law firm, which I didn't know what it was before, but basically it's like a super small firm. There was only 3 attorneys working. They had like legal assistants, secretary, like other folks working and stuff for sure, but there was only 3 actual attorneys, and it was like, you know, basic firm. And so I was an intern. I was with them for 3 years on and off during my breaks during college. And when I was there as an intern, like, you know, whatever that means, at first, literally all I would do would spend 8-hour days in front of the copy machine. Like I was making copies of all the intake forms that they use for the clients, like internal documents that people needed, like checklists of like what you needed for like naturalization, making copies of like practice questions for folks who were studying for the citizenship test, like all of that sort of stuff is what I was making copies of. And then I got moved up to making copies of like cases like G28s and the forms and printing them out and doing all that stuff. And then for a while I was also doing data entry on the software that they use, put clients' data. So then I was like kind of doing that from what they were doing by hand, moving that onto digital and doing that sort of work. I mean, the last 2 times that I went with them during my breaks, I was working with actual clients. Then I started calling clients to give them money because they owed us money. And then I started calling them very, very briefly at the end for like case updates, like doing case intakes. And I was putting a lot of filings together. So with the legal assistants or the paralegals for everything, but I would do the intake and like fill out the forms, have that be double checked, then I would print it out, and then I would do any sort of like research, like Google research, not like legal research, just normal research for stuff, and print those out and like put it all together, and then it'd be sent off to immigration. So like that was like a lot of like the work was for like intern work, a lot of copies, a lot of like paperwork, very few client interactions, at least legal wise, but there were some. I also helped with tutoring clients who wanted tutoring for their citizenship test. So there was some client interface, but for the most part, I was just in the background, and that's sort of what like intern work was, like legal wise. And I mean, I was a high school graduate and like college student during that time, so it wasn't anything wild, and I think that's like maybe one of the lower levels that you can start as. So that I did that, and that was like my first role. And then my next role that I had was as a legal assistant at a nonprofit in Los Angeles, and this was like they had different teams. Like I was on a specific team, so I think it must have been like 20 plus attorneys sort of thing, because the particular team that I was on had 5 attorneys and 2 accredited representatives, which is a role that you could have in immigration, where it still allows you to represent someone in court, immigration court. But so yes, there was like a good 5-6 different teams. So if each team had that many attorneys, then it was pretty big. But it was a nonprofit world, right? So it's different. Different in the sense that like the clients, like, you know, I was asking for the firm, I would be calling clients asking for money. That's not something that I was doing in the nonprofit world, because a lot of them are like, they were getting funding from the government or the places, so the client themselves weren't paying. which just mean we did get a lot of like clients asking for other resources that maybe we didn't have, and so it was kind of relaying that information. So as a legal assistant, I spoke to the client first before the attorney did, or the accredited representative did. I was the one who sort of spoke to them first, kind of made sure that they were ready for the intake they were going to be having, that they had documents that they needed to have. The clients would send me those things. It was all during the pandemic, so it was remote. So it was like a lot of troubleshooting, trying to get the client to send me like a photocopy of their ID or whatever it was they needed, like taxes, depending on what they were going to be doing, before they met with the attorney or the accredited representative. And then once they had the intake with them, then I would get all the information and like kind of compile that into the software that we use for the clients and just make sure that everything was there. And then once we knew what process we were doing, a lot of what I was doing back during that time was domestic violence cases, like so for a U visa. So then I would be the one working with the client to compile all of their documents that they needed for that, working with them on their declaration, working with them to fill out the forms. Like I felt like I was doing all the work, to be honest. And then if obviously we can't give legal advice, so if they had questions, then I would have to relay them back and then get an answer and then call the client, tell them what it was. And I was kind of that middle person, but it didn't mean that I was most like 100% client facing in that role. I was like a legal assistant, but it was very like assistant-esque. Like everything was like through me for someone else. And then the legal stuff that needed to be doing legal things, it was on them. But I was mostly filling things out and not relaying information to the client. So it did really feel like legal assistant role was like a good title for what the work I was actually doing. And so that was that role at a nonprofit. And I think the only difference was, again, like not needing to ask the client for money and like having to sort of know resources to refer them out to or share with them, because it was like clients that needed support, not just in immigration, but just like other living resources. In law school, this is where I first began with my legal roles. I was a legal fellow after my first year, my summer, 1L summer. Legal fellow was my role. It was also a nonprofit, but it was a smaller nonprofit. There was only about 8 attorneys, I think. I don't really remember exactly, but it was pretty small, and I was the only fellow that they had. So I was the only person working with the whole office. And as a legal fellow, or as at least a law student, the difference between legal assistant and legal fellow is pretty big, because as a legal assistant, you know, I was just told, do this, do this, do that. I need it by XYZ. If you have questions, let me know, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, you can't give legal advice. Relate everything. As a law student, you still can't give legal advice. But there was a little bit more agency in the sense of like, what kind of cases are you curious about? Like, you know, like we can see if we have any of that, and you can help us brainstorm, or, you know, take a look at this. What do you think? Then I would get told if I was thinking about it wrong or thinking about it correctly. But it was kind of like gave me more of a sense to try and do legal analysis and like try to make more sense of it like on my own. And then I would be told like what to tell them, right? So like I was still not the one giving advice, but it gave me more like agency to try and see if I was grasping the concepts and like what, if I were an attorney, what I would be doing and like what the steps were. So it was a lot more behind the scenes in that sense, like able to learn about how the attorneys think and like why attorneys do things that they do. And then that's when my help would come in, like if I needed to be talking to clients, if I needed to be doing legal research for something, or helping draft a memo for like what the attorneys needed support with. So it felt more like support and like less assistant, like being told to do XYZ versus like, oh, I'm doing this because you need to do that. And like we kind of had that conversation about why that needed to happen. So I felt like I had more agency, and I did take like a lead on a case in the sense that like I was the one essentially like trying to come up with a strategy, and then checking in with the attorney, and then taking point, talking to the client, asking for the documents that I needed. And then if I noted something, then I would be like, oh, hey, attorney, I realized this, like, what is this going to change something, or like, what do we need to do? So everything was supervision, but it was a little bit more agency. I don't know what the difference is with like fellow and like what I'm about to say right now. But like that was what that title was, and it just felt very different from legal assistant in pre-law school to legal fellow in law school. So then my role after that was a law clerk. And I've had the law clerk position in 2 different places. That the title difference from legal fellow, not sure. But I was a law clerk at a nonprofit and a law clerk at a firm. And I guess that's sort of different. Honestly, I feel like I'm just talking, but law clerk in the nonprofit, which the nonprofit was pretty big. Like, this is like a pretty big organization. They have a lot of different teams, a lot of different attorneys. This entire thing has been all immigration because that's what I'm interested in. So their immigration team happened to be pretty small. It was just 1 attorney, but the organization as a whole is a pretty big nonprofit. So as a law clerk here, I did work fully on like a full case. Again, much more agency, of course, with supervision. And then I did some memos. So I would get told just like, here's a legal question that I need an answer to, do the research, write me a paper, tell me what the answer is. And then that's what I spent on. I did that during the semester. I didn't have that much time to do a lot of things. I did do like 2 memos, and I worked on a full case and like helped with a few other like sort of legal things that some other cases needed. A lot more like alone time. It was a lot more research, a lot more self-guided in a sense, what I was doing on a day-to-day basis. So that sort of does pair with the law clerk stuff that I was doing during the summer, which I definitely had more time to do more projects. And this was at a firm. Finally, I found out that I guess it's a small firm. I did not know, like, because I'm definitely not like a big law girl. I did not really know the difference between small, mid, big firm, but I think there's like 15 attorneys, and I guess it's a small firm. It was here in San Francisco, obviously private. So this is the first time I had to do like billing. I did do billing in the nonprofit as a law clerk role, but with the nonprofit world, it's different because, like, again, the client isn't the one getting billed because it's nonprofit. So I just had to note like how much time I was spending on task. It wasn't really like I was billing the client and they didn't have like matters or like different things to be billed to. It was just like I spent this much time on this client doing naturalization stuff, and that's it. As an intern, I never billed anything at all. I was just paid for the hour. And even if I was helping with some cases, like, I didn't do billing at all, didn't touch that whatsoever. As a legal assistant, I didn't do billing either at all. Like, I didn't even know that I was spending time on like certain cases, and I was obviously working on cases, but like I didn't do any billing. As a legal fellow, no billing either. I was working on cases, didn't know how much time I was spending on XYZ, none of that. So the law clerk was the first time I had to do billing. Maybe that's something different from all the other roles. Billing, but it was very much more like relaxed and not as like not as like minute by minute for the nonprofit law clerk, but for the firm law clerk, billing was a big deal because I was actually getting billed to the client. And so every second counted. Like, I would get told, do this project and spend an hour on this, and then check in with me so we can see whether you should spend more time on this or not. So I felt like a lot of times, I don't know if I mentioned this in like videos when I was recording during the summer, but I felt like I was in a law school exam because I would get told, like, here's this question, spend 1 hour max. And then I would like go in and be like, like looking for an hour, and then just be like, oh my God, this is what I found. Like, right on the dot, because again, client was being billed. So it was like much more important. Like, it was just research. I didn't speak to a single client this entire summer. No client interface, no phone calls, like no emailing clients at all. I would just get legal research questions from all the attorneys. I would support in like looking through files, writing memos, drafting letters, and research. Like, that's literally what it was in the role as a law clerk, which I guess like for the nonprofit law clerk position that I held, it was also research, but I did also work on clients. I don't know if the research purely comes because it's a law clerk position or just because this firm, like, I knew that was what the firm had told me I would be doing. I just don't know if it attaches to the title of law clerk itself, if it would carry across like all law areas of law. So I'm not sure. So tons of research. Literally, the way I tell my friends sometimes is like, I was just in a dark room by myself talking to nobody. That's not the case. I was in a cubicle in the middle of the freaking office floor. Everybody saw me. People would come to me, whatever, tons of meetings. But it felt that way because I wasn't talking to clients. And those are all the roles that I had: intern, legal assistant, legal fellow, law clerk, and then as a nonprofit and as a firm. And I've been at a boutique law firm, a small firm, I guess, and then like a kind of a small and a big nonprofit difference. Which is why I wanted to make this video, just because I realized I've been done a little bit of everything, which is crazy to think that I've been doing all this work already for quite some time, and I'm so close to being an attorney now, and I don't know how to be an attorney. That's gonna be a whole new world when I get there, but I'm gonna focus on the now. And that's that. I don't know if this is confusing, helpful whatsoever. It was interesting for me to kind of break down what those different things were for this video, so I hope it was like 0.5 of help or of use. Comment down below if you have any questions of any of this. Maybe if you all have more insight. If I know I have some attorneys or like law school grads who follow me, so if you have any sort of insight in any of this, feel free to comment down below. Let me know what you'd like to see from me in the future, and thank you for watching. Bye.